This is Duncan Fisher, and you are listening to the A.C.E.S Junkyard Podcast live on 30.49 Comstar Radio.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Armored Combat Escalation Service Podcast, episode 33, your number one voted MWO and Battletech podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, also known as Cattra, Kell. Today is Thursday, January 21st, 2016. Welcome to the new year, everybody. With me today is Tierkron and Slambot, though Slambot said he might chime in a little bit later, but he is present and he might be typing some stuff, so I'll just let him do his thing. So how's it going, Tierkron? How did the holidays treat you?
Oh, pretty good. I can't complain. No, it was cold. Well, no, I'll amend that. It started out very warm for me, and then gradually shifted to cold. So we had something of a heat wave where I live in the United States, which is completely antithesis to what we should have for the holiday season. I believe we set a record on Christmas Day. It was 70 degrees. So it was.
That's actually pretty warm.
Yeah. Well, it's 70. I should clarify 70 degrees Fahrenheit for all of you who are internationally listening who use Celsius instead of Fahrenheit. So don't think it was, everything was burning down and randomly combusting into flame.
But still, that's for reference, that's still 21 degrees Celsius. I think on Christmas here, it was like -5 Celsius. So. Yeah,
and to clarify, I'm in upstate New York, so this is it was very, very odd that, it was that warm for Christmas. I mean, I've had green Christmases in the past, but never when my yard is actually still green. So, it was...
But Santa did find you, right?
Oh, of course.
Oh, okay. Delivered you all that coal?
No coal. But he also didn't bring me my plutonium like I asked.
Oh, it's a shame.
I want to build my own fusion reactor so I can build my own mech, but it's just not happening.
Hey, they got that Malmer thingy muscle now that. Saw an article written about that.
Yeah.
So, well, just a little bit more to go. We almost got it. We can do it, humanity. We can make giant robots and blast ourselves to the dark age. All right. So, as for talk on BattleTech and MechWarrior and all that fun stuff, one thing I do want to bring up for people who have contributed to the Kickstarter for BattleTech, your packages or whatever for you to go select what you want. For people that have like the hats, the jackets, that sort of stuff, that is live. So make sure you check your emails that you kickstarted that thing with. Make sure you get all your selections and information in, and make sure you also activate they're going to give you a little when you confirm it all, you should have a CD key type thing. Make sure you activate that on the BattleTech website to get all your goodies as well. So just a heads up for those people who kickstarted on the BattleTech game.
I think you have until the end of this month to do it, or else it defaults. And so if you want to get your this is the HBS product, BattleTech. If you want to get it through a specific distribution, like if you want it through Steam, or if you want it through GOG, or if you want it through something else, you have to go in and you have to specify. If you don't, I believe they said the default will be a Steam code.
Yes, because that's usually the easiest way to do it. Because Steam code's pretty, for PC players at least, Steam code's pretty safe bet.
Yeah, and you have to go. It also is a secondary function if you backed at a level where you are getting a physical item such as a hat or a jacket. You have to go in and you have to confirm the address and size and all that, rigmarole, so that they can get it shipped out to you and make sure that it gets shipped correctly.
And of course, all the very nice looking wallpapers were also released for backers who took the survey and stuff like that.
Yep.
So you can probably find those online, but if you want multiple different sizes, they're just fill out your backer form. So that's all I'm going to say. Just fill out your backer form. Do it. On to Mech Warrior related news, because I don't think there's been a little bit of art assets released over the time there for the BattleTech game, but not too much more information other than that. A couple of Kickstarter updates, but it's mainly dealing with the backer stuff. So we can safely move on to Mech Warrior Online. And speaking of Mech Warrior Online, let's talk about a few things over the past few weeks, since we haven't had a podcast for probably, I would say roughly, you've had a generally season about a month.
Just about because we recorded just that Tuesday prior to Christmas, so it's been almost exactly a month. So yeah.
Yep. So some of the changes, let's just do a couple real quick ones. So like changes to Bog, which is the inclusion of the destructible terrain, and let's talk about the Gauss changes as well, and the laser tapering off for the max range. So let's get those three things out of the way real quick.
Yep. The destructible terrain on Bog is something that people have been asking for a while. Especially since we saw it first being floated with the new River City variant, and we saw it again with the new Forest Colony variant. People were asking, would that be added into other maps, specifically Bog, which has lots of trees and roots and everything, without having to have a full map redo? And it turned out the answer would be yes, it would be added. And for the most part, it's been received with a kind of, it's not really ground shattering, ground shaking, earth shattering. It's just kind of there. I know a lot of people who have played on the new version of Bog with this train destruction being on. I myself have played it once. It's really not all that noticeable of a difference. You do see things break and fall down, but parts where where you were getting stuck, you're still kind of getting stuck on those. There's a number of issues on that map that really need to be cleaned up, and it's a map where the devil's in the details, and there are a lot of small details here and there that need to be ironed out. One that I know a number of people have complained about is on one of the center hills. There is this square area where a tree is kind of tipped over, and there's this large mass of roots. And if you are descending at the wrong angle or trying to cross at the wrong angle, you can easily get caught on it and just stuck. And if you're taking fire at the time, you are now fish in a barrel. So I've heard a lot of people say, if they're going to do some destructible terrain, that needs to be included into it. Something needs to be able to break on that ball of roots in order to allow people to move and get free. But overall, as I said, the response from it has been kind of, a shrug of the shoulders of, it's not really a great improvement. There's greater issues with the map that people want to see, dealt with overall.
That's pretty much how I felt about it as well. I only got to play it on the little bit that I got to play on that map, because of course a lot of people don't vote for that map, but the few times that I do get to drop on that map, That's what I found. Like, this destructible terrain is nice in some spots, but there's also still a lot of spots that suffer from like problems still with the map. There's still places where you can get stuck. There are still places where it's just well, mainly the steps is what I'm thinking of, because if there's a step that's for some reason like 2 pixels too high, it's just like a dead end stop. You hit a wall, and
Yeah.
it's just like okay, thanks game. But
Yeah, there's
there's still a lot of problems with bog. I think the destructible terrain is a nice step in the right direction. But yeah, you're right. It is kind of just like a shrug of the shoulders. It's like, okay, it's a nice gesture. And I mean, everyone does want to see more destructible terrain, but I think bog is one of those maps that, much like Alpine, might need a redo.
yeah, I like Bog overall as a map. I
Well, yeah,
think it's,
I like it aesthetically. I like it like it has fun gameplay elements, like the fact that you can go up on a mountain and drop down in behind people and stuff
yeah,
like that. Like, it has fun gameplay elements, but there's also a lot of, I think, the negatives and some of the bummers that come with the map that I guess lead to people getting aggravated outweigh the fun of the map.
yeah. The you know, quick changes that I would say need to be implemented. One, one of the hills in the center with the steps needs to have, basically be rotated 180 degrees. There should be no reason why both sets of steps are on a single side and thus available really to only one team at a time. You know, there should be a set of steps on one side and a set of steps on the other. You know, each team should have equal access in order to get up one of the hills. Without having to completely truck around to the other side. The other thing I would say that probably needs to happen on that is some of the larger plateaus that are on there probably just need to be pulled out. It needs to be thinned out a little bit. There's a lot of good cover, which I really like for the map, but there's just too much of dead end space where you've got this giant mass of blockage there that that almost interlinks with one another, and it makes just a real tough time getting around on the map and getting situated, getting your team moving, and and just playing. It slows things down way too much, and so I'd like to see those taken, thinned out a little bit. You don't have to remove all of them, but I would think one or two here and there on each side would help things immensely.
Well, one thing I've noticed with the bog is that the little hills are very little, and the big hills, the two big hills, are very big, and there's like nothing in between. It'd be kind of nice to see a kind of a graduated system, or well, you know what I mean, where ones you got some big ones, you got some medium-sized ones, you got some little ones.
So I know one of the other things that people have been saying to me is they'd like to see just the steps taken out and replaced with a gradual incline instead. I don't know if that's necessarily.
Or even if they have to code it as an incline and then just, or like, you know what I mean, like make it an incline but then give it the paint cover up of the steps.
Yeah, something, because the steps are, as
And
you
even
said, they're
though
kind
and
of a
even
pain.
yeah, and even though, like, hypothetically your mech might be floating in air for like a half second as you go up it, like, I'm okay with that if I don't get stuck.
Yeah, because there are, as you said, there are a number of spots on those steps where if it's just a couple pixels high, you know, it looks like you should be able to transition over it, and you can't. You come to a complete and utter stop. So it's one of those boxes there that's just needs to get cleaned up. So it's overall, I like Viridian Bog. It's just details here and there on it that just need to be addressed.
I don't have that much of a problem with the steps. I mean, yeah, they're aggravating. It can be frustrating sometimes, but so is Mother Nature. I think it adds. Being frustrated with terrain is kind of part of just maneuver. You know, I understand it's aggravating for a lot of people, and I sympathize, and I really don't have a problem if they change it. But, you know, so's Mother Nature. Mother Nature's aggravating.
Should we talk about now the changes to weapons, such as
Yeah.
like the Gauss rifle and the laser tapering off? Because I mean, I think we can all agree that the changes to Bog were a step in the right direction, but probably a little bit more needs to be done. Because I know from, I'm just gonna go back to Bog here for 1 second before we transition. Like I've said, especially on like the NGNG podcast and stuff like that, when Bog first came out and whatnot, one of my biggest pet peeves is that the biggest middle section, the biggest middle spire or cliff or whatever you want to call it, only has the one way up, which is facing one team and not the other. And that still stands as something in my head. Like there should be two ways up on either side, or from the others, or like from the middle sides into it, so both teams have an equal chance of getting up there. But
Yeah. So, but
changes to the Gauss rifle. How about that cooldown reduction after having it buffed
yeah,
crazy
going
high?
from 5.5 seconds to 5 seconds, it is a bit noticeable. I like it. It's still a little bit slower than I'd like. I think they need to, maybe 4.5 or somewhere like that would be a better sweet spot.
Well,
But
what was it originally before it got buffed up to the 5.5? Wasn't it 4.5 or was it 3.5 or something like
I
that?
thought it was 4.
4? Okay.
But I could be wrong because some, it's hard to tell at times because the mechs that you're running Gauss on, oftentimes you have a ballistic cooldown quirk or you have a Gauss quirk on it, so you're not seeing the full cooldown time. So it's one of those things where, yeah, it might have been this, but you're not actually experiencing it that way unless you're playing it on a mech that really doesn't have the quirks for it, which most people probably wouldn't be doing unless they are relatively new. The I do think it's a nice change and it works for the most part. But it's it is what it is. I mean, people are not getting their super Gauss, cooldown with the gridiron that they had, which I'm okay with. It's still a good mech, and with this change, it's a bit better. Um, I didn't have any problem really with them changing it initially because, as I said, most mechs that you're running Gauss on are quirked in some way that you're not feeling the full impact of the change. You're still experiencing a better cooldown rate than other mechs that people would attempt to mount Gauss on. So it's it's really not that big of a deal for me.
Yeah, that's a fair thing to say. Personally, I think the Gauss is almost in a sweet spot as it is. I think I can agree with you a little bit in saying that, like, yes, it's probably, you could probably find a slightly better time. I don't know if 4.5 would be the right amount. But maybe like 4.75 or something like that. But 5.0 compared to 5.5, 5.0 for me at least was a noticeable difference. Mainly on, well, as you mentioned, like the gridiron and stuff like that. Stuff where the Gauss rifle was offset but weighted to one side, so you would have to peek and shoot a whole bunch. The amount of like charge build up time as you are starting to creep out is slightly reduced. So from what I've noticed is that I can take like one or two more steps away from how much I need to step outwards before I cool down, if that makes sense to what I'm saying. Okay. So basically for people who might not get it, like if there's cover or if I'm standing behind a piece of cover, the amount of time that I have to start charging my Gauss rifle as I step out has been reduced. So It basically just means I don't have to be exposed as much.
Yeah, the coordination between movement and firing is better.
Yes. And I really do like that. I've been playing around with a couple builds on the Warhammer involving Gauss rifles as well, because I'm a heretic and I don't use PPCs.
Well, yeah. On the topic of PPCs, I think PPCs need to be re-examined because I've been
Oh,
using
I
them.
agree 100%. PPCs, basically, if you had the choice between a PPC and a large pulse laser, I would take the large pulse laser every day.
Yeah. And
Yep.
it's not just damage or velocity or anything. I think there's still an issue with the hit registration with PPCs because I've taken numerous shots with PPCs, for a number of matches over the last year, and I'll see, maybe like 1 out of every 3 shots that I take not register, even though I clearly see it impact. And it's not just, my crosshairs don't flash. The paper doll on of the mech that I'm targeting doesn't change. And there's something wrong because if I'm hitting with two PPCs or two ER PPCs, if they're inner sphere, I'm doing 20. I should be doing 20 damage, and it's not. That it doesn't show any change. There's something off there, and I don't know if it's server side or if it's in the bare bones of the coding, but there's something. There's something there, and I'm not alone. And I've talked to a number of different people, and they're all seeing it. And it's, I think, one of the reasons that PPCs are not being used as much as laser vomit is. Not just because laser vomit is better because of the heat to damage ratio and the DPS is better, but PPCs just feel unreliable. They
Mm-hmm.
they don't hit. They don't do damage when you expect them to do damage.
I
And
agree with them that 110%.
I was gonna say,
and
there's almost like a small delay as well when you hit someone with a PPC.
That and they're universally too hot. They're
Yes.
universally too hot. The laser adds the heat over its burn duration, whereas the PPC is all at once. And ER PPCs as they are almost completely useless.
yeah, I also want to say, for some of these mechs that are getting PPC quirks, I almost want to say to PGI that, if you put a PPC quirk on a mech, it should just be, just PPC, ER PPC. There should be no difference when it comes to the quirk. It should be, up to the player to choose which they want. Do they take the longer range but greater heat of the ER PPC, or do they take the lesser range, lesser heat, but having a minimum necessary range in order to do damage with the PPC? At least for which is the case for the inner sphere. You know, because there's very few chassis have an ER PPC quirk. Most of them that carry a PPC, it's just a general PPC quirk, and so there's no reason for people to bother breaking out an ER PPC. So I know they've got separate quirks, and they're trying to keep those quirks to what the stock build is kind of on the mech, but I think they just need to make a general PPC quirk that affects both and not differentiate between the two any longer. And on top of that, examine the coding on the PPC hits because they just don't seem to be working. I was playing last night with a couple of other A.C.E.S members, and I was playing a Black Knight. I had 2 ER PPCs. I lit into the side of a cicada, and he didn't even flinch. His paper doll went from yellow armor and stayed yellow armor, even though I was well within 300 meters. And that should not be happening. So there's something wrong with PPCs. And I'd like that they're addressing, the Gauss rifle cooldown. I like that they're doing the visual effects with the lasers, but there are some issues with the other weapons, and PPCs are specific that they definitely need to be examined.
Another weapon that I feel like needs a little bit of love. Maybe not so much anymore. Well, I mean, the AC2 is always one that needs a little bit of something. But the AC10, I always feels gets not thought of a whole lot.
Yeah. Well.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I mean, there's reasons for that.
Yeah, the AC10 is just this kind of middle child for autocannons. It doesn't have the neutral heat and fast fire capabilities of the AC5, and it doesn't have the hitting, the main hitting power of the AC20. It's just this odd place for it. More so, I think the LB, 10, the LBX autocannons in general. I think they need to be adjusted a little bit, give them better, crit seeking ability or something, because, there's just no reason to take an LBX autocannon over a regular autocannon or a UAC. Or, for those who aren't familiar with the term, UAC stands for ultra autocannon. So, LBs should have there should be a reason to carry them, besides just them being a slightly lesser weight.
I think they need to do more armor damage.
Well, I'm okay with the armor damage on them, because yeah, you're firing a cloud of pellets instead of a solid slug. But as I said, I would like to see better crit damage with them. That if you fire an LB10X, there should be a greater chance that you hit something important, like you knock out a weapon or you knock out a heat sink, especially if you have a breach in the armor already. There's, that's kind of one of the points for an LB10 for an LBX autocannon. Besides that, it would be vehicle hunting and anti-aircraft purposes, which we don't have in this game. So you have to do something else, and that's the crit chances.
So laser tapering off the max range. Thoughts on that?
I like it. I think it's a nice improvement, because before you could fire, a small laser and it would basically shoot across the entire map. You wouldn't do damage, but you'd see it visually, and it just kind of
You'd
was
also
this.
get the hit indicator as well.
Yeah, you'd get this just weird. It just kind of broke the aesthetic of, oh, I'm in this giant mech, and why am I seeing this? That shouldn't. You shouldn't see that, in a way of, though you'll have people, the purists, the scientists go, well, you shouldn't be able to see a laser anyway, considering it's light and it's traveling so fast. And leave that aside, guys. That's not the issue we're talking about. But I like the aesthetic change for it. I feel it's nice not to be running around with a laser pointer all the time. If people want to still have a laser pointer, tag is their go-to.
I'll agree. I think the lasers tapering off at their maximum range is a good thing. Some people might not. Actually, I think probably a good amount of people might not. But that's just me generalizing as well. But I think as far as like game balance and game feel, because again, people could use it to kind of, well, I mean, you'd still have to see them originally, but they could get hit markers, I guess, with a small laser out a long distance, and you could know someone was there that perhaps didn't render in yet.
Yeah, it's just, aesthetically, it's more pleasing this way. gameplay wise, it doesn't give a free targeting indicator because there are some players that would do that. They would mount a single small laser on, a Jaeger mech that's dual Gauss, and they might not be able to see directly, the mech, or they might be able to see it but not be certain if they're actually on target to hit. They'd fire the small laser, they'd get, some registration that yes, they're on target from it, and they'd let fly with their Gauss then. And it just it's a better situation now where, you're going to have to rely more on your individual skill and not small crutches like that.
So let's talk about some of the new things that were released in the latest patch. Actually, one of the things before that, before we move on, you brought this to my attention because I did not catch it. Possible cataphract variant in the future?
Uh, okay, let's clarify this. The recent snowfall sale has a number of mechs that are all, that are just being discounted both for MC and for C bills, 35%. One of the mech variants that was listed was one of the cataphract variants, and it's the cataphract 3L. Now, some people picked up on this really quickly because the cataphract 3L is not actually in game yet. And so what's special about the cataphract 3L? Well, what makes it special is that it has mask. Instead of having ECM, it has mask. And this is significant because the only intersphere mech we have with mask is one of the Wolverine variants. So having suddenly a heavy mech that would be carrying it is a big deal. So people immediately jumped onto the forum and we're asking, where's this 3L? We don't see it in the store. It's not listed in game. Was it a special promotion? What's going on? And Matt Newman at PGI jumped on and pretty quickly and said it was a mistake to list it. The database that they were using to put up the mechs, to select the mechs for the sale is the same database they use to track what mechs they have in game, what mechs that they are working on, and the like. And the 3L is on the list for, to be worked on. But at this point, it hasn't had any work done on it. So it's one that they would, at least from what he indicated, both on the forums and on Twitter, is something that he would like to, see come into the game eventually. But it's not something that, it's going to be coming out next week. It's going to be coming out next month. It's just one of the variants that it's going to show up eventually. But it's still probably a bit away. So he made a clarification that they changed the database for the one that they're using for sales so that it reflects only the mechs that they actually have in game, not the ones that they've got listed for purposes of figuring out what can they what variants are they should they be working on, what variants do they have to create themselves, because some of you may not be aware that while there are tons of mechs in the Battletech lore already, and many of them have numerous variants, there are a number of mechs that don't have a lot of variants. And PGI has had to make variants up themselves, and in doing so, they don't want to accidentally name a variant the same name as something that already exists. So they've been keeping this database with all of the information, and it's understandable that occasionally, small mistakes are going to be made and they're going to miss something here and there, which seems to be the case in this part. They checked a box when they didn't mean to, and it caused a big bout of hoopla. So everyone calm down. It's not a big deal.
It's not coming yet.
Yeah. You still
in the future, or I should say, it's probably not even coming in the near future from what I'm aware of. So
yeah. I mean, we've got, we've had the Marauder show up. We've had the Warhammer now. We know the Rifleman is next, and then the Archer. New variants possibly showing up, I would say, come the spring, but I would think that they're going to be well after they get, these.
Well, don't forget about the new clan mech pack as well.
Yeah. So, it's. Well, and by Clan Mech Pack, you mean the Origin 2C pack, right?
No. Russ was on Twitter over the holidays asking people to submit clan mechs of one of each weight type that they would like to see in the game.
I did not see that, so.
Yes.
Interesting.
Because from what he had said previously, they were just going to stay away from large mech packs.
They could still probably be doing it the same way they're doing it now with the 1 a month type thing, but
so
it's probably just like creating a backlog of what people want, right? So
yeah, that could very well be it. So it's if we see new variants, they'll be announced in a more formal announcement, and we could even hear about them at a upcoming town hall or some such. But I would not expect them to be in the game until at least March, if that.
I'd say maybe probably like April. If they're going to do anything like that, probably April. Because February is when they're going to... This past week or two is really when they just started... Or I'd say past week is when they really started getting back to work after the holiday break, right?
Yeah.
So January for any company, if you've ever worked on a company that produces anything at all, no, January is pretty much a scrub month. And that's either a good or bad thing, but even then, January is usually a scrub month. So February is when your year really begins. Let's just say that.
Yeah. So, if anything's coming down the pipe, it's going to be a bit away. So, a little bit of excitement there. But for mechs that we did get, we got the Warhammer.
Got that Warhammer.
I did not pick up the Warhammer because I have like 17 empty mech bays. So I don't feel the need to buy a brand new mech yet. So I will ask you, Cattra, since you did pick up the Warhammer.
I did.
And you love the Warhammer. What have your
that's an iffy statement, but my impression with the Warhammer, I think it's basically, to put in perspective, and people might like yell at me for this, but it's basically a 5-ton lighter Marauder.
I would have to disagree.
No, yeah, see, there you go, disagreement. It might just be the way that I'm playing it. A lot of my build, I've been playing the Black Widow and the 6R. I haven't had a chance to try out the 6D and the 7S, though I have a hypothetical build for the 6D. Of course, the 6D being the all energy variant, which is basically just going to be pulse lasers, because WUB. My 6R and Black Widow are running 4 mediums and 2 Gauss rifles. But yeah, I enjoyed. The hitboxes are all right. I guess that's my biggest problem with the hitbox. I found myself getting left and right cord a bit.
Yeah, I've heard
that's
mixed reactions. Some people have been complaining that the Warhammer is a glass cannon, while other people have been saying it's very tanky. So from what I've gathered, it's got to be somewhere in between, because they both can't be right. You can't have a mech that is tanky and a glass cannon at the same time. That's a contradiction in terms. So, what overall, outside of the hitboxes, what do you think of the armor at this point on it?
Well, I mean, that's just the thing. It depends on how people set up their mechs. Like, so for me, generally, like, let me just go into Smurfy here and do my armor up real quick here, how I always do it. So, I always try to keep 10 rear armor on the left and right torso, which will give me 50 in the front. And my center, I keep at about 12 to 13, depending, which gives me, in this case, I got 12, so it gives me 76 on the front. So the armor is all right. But let's compare it to, say, something like the Grasshopper at the moment, which is also a 70-ton mech. I mean, the Grasshopper is pretty So if I do the same thing with the grasshopper, it gives me 76 on the front for 12 in the rear and 50 on either side as well. But I think the grasshopper gets those armor quirks now, which makes it
Yes, it has a
better.
couple armor.
So
Is it
it's
armor
like,
or structure quirks? I can't
might be
remember.
structure.
So, would you say that the Warhammer is XL friendly or not?
From what I've been going, see, this is where it gets weird because I haven't had enough time to play it yet to like pin it down as saying XL friendly or not. But I'm just gonna say my general rule of like, if it's above 70 tons, don't put an XL in it. I want to say it's like, if your playstyle and stuff like that is around weighting mechs to one side, I'm gonna say it's probably very XL friendly. And in general, I would say yes. I would say yes. Warhammer is XL friendly, but don't go charging into stupid stuff with it.
I would say the Warhammer is interesting balance. I've run them all generally. They're light. They're not really tanky. They are XL friendly. The fact that they have a large center torso, but they are just a fairly balanced mech. They don't excel at any one thing. They're a jack of all trades kind of a thing. They're fairly mobile. They're fairly tanky. They're fairly high firepower. They're not going to overwhelm you with any particular aspect of their any characteristic of theirs. That's my impression.
Okay, so I guess then my question is, do you take a Warhammer over, say, a Thunderbolt, which is kind of the go-to inner sphere heavy?
I don't know. I haven't deleted my mechs out yet. My guess would be probably not. Just because, but then again, it remains to be seen. So
I'm going to just project here and say potentially yes. And I'm going to say that for the 6D only, though. Because the Thunderbolt, the big thing with it is that it's all pulse lasers, right?
Yeah.
You can transfer the same builds that most people run in the Thunderbolt into the Warhammer 6D and gain 5 tons, which allows you to either put in a bigger engine or allows you to put on more heat sinks to make it more heat neutral. So I think the Warhammer 6D is the potential for the best build out of the Warhammer. That being said, even so, the other Warhammers can still be good. So for example, the 6R and the 7S both have 6 energy hardpoints respectively. So even then, you could still do probably 4 medium pulses and 2 large pulses pretty easily and still stay like pretty heat neutral with a big engine. So I think as far as like energy goes, the potential is there. But I still think a lot of people are going to take the Thunderbolt over the Warhammer, just because, especially in community warfare, more than the pug side of things, mainly because the tonnage to damage output.
Okay, that seems fair and reasonable.
Because I think when we do CW, I still drop 3 Thunderbolts and a light mech. So the ability to cram, basically the ability to cram 3 Thunderbolts will outweigh the ability to cram 2 Warhammers and 2 medium mechs, in my opinion.
Well, right now you could take 3 Warhammers and a 55 ton if you wanted.
Yeah, because they boosted the drop weight up. But considering PGI's fickleness when it comes to drop weight at times, that's always going to be an issue. You might not be able to run, the same 3 Warhammers in a medium, or or 3 Thunderbolts in a light. It could change.
It's always going to fluctuate, right?
So yeah.
Yeah.
Unless PGI is no longer paying attention to the CW, which they have a track record of doing. So it's
60 days.
Yeah. So new mech seems to be, positively received for the most part. New map though, Polar Highlands, which I've been incorrectly referring to as polar wastes when I've been talking to some people. So, Polar Highlands, I've had a couple matches on it. Have you guys had a chance to play it?
Just got done.
I've gotten 2 matches on it. That is it.
Okay.
Just got done with it.
What's your what's your overall impression of it right now?
I think initially people are going boring and we don't like it or for some reason because honestly it looks flat and featureless, but if you get down into it, it really, really is not. I think it allows for wide, varied tactics right now. Everyone's leaning towards super long range stuff. I think eventually it will that will change to because it really lends yourself to fast mobile brawling because you can pop over hill and pop down under hill, pop around hills. There's all sorts of routes to get to anywhere you want to go without being seen. There's all sorts of positive aspects to that. I think that, you know, as gameplay evolves, people are going to be like, wow, this really isn't bad. Let's try this. And last night, for example, we did a hill rush push where we just pop over the hill and pop into the next valley and pop over the hill into the next valley, pop over the hill into the next valley, and we obliterated an LRM team, a team set up to run LRMs. Now, NARC is going to be extremely effective on that map because once you're NARC, there really is nowhere to hide. Other than that, it's going to be, I think the jury is still out a little bit, but I think it's a very positive map.
Okay, Cattra, what do you think?
I'm going to give the same thing. Right now, a lot of people don't have a lot of tactics or strategy for Polar Highlands. One of the biggest things is that people, when I played my 2 matches, people were not grouping together. And as such, they were going off and they're like, well, I can't find anyone. It's like, well, everyone's going towards the center and you're running around like E9, E10, that area, like the upper and lower areas. And it's like, I understand you want to see the map, but if you're going to run around and look at the map, don't complain you're not going to find anyone type of deal. At the same time, I think Polar Highlands is really good for MechWarrior Online. I think it's one of the reasons why I will say, and this might get me in trouble, whatever, I never want to see jump sniping brought back into the game.
Yeah.
It is a very much I think it this is the type of map that shows one of the fundamental problems that was wrong with jump sniping in MechWarrior 4 and map design. I think a lot of MechWarrior 4's maps, if jump sniping was not a thing, I think a lot of MechWarrior 4's maps would be a lot better. And I think Polar Highlands is very reminiscent of a lot of MechWarrior 4 maps, and the fact that we don't have jump sniping, I think, leads to this map being viable and having good gameplay potentially.
Okay. My impression of it has been, first of all, when my first map, before I take any gameplay on a map, I always run actual around it in training grounds to get the layout of it and to see what potential it holds. And I usually am running around in a little light mech, so I am not spending all day plotting around it. And one of the things that I immediately noticed, as you said, Cattra, was the potential for jump sniping on this map. If jump sniping was still a thing, this map would be reviled by many. But with jump sniping not being a very effective tactic anymore and not being really used, it opens up a great more potential for this map. I actually think it's more reminiscent of some of the maps from MechWarrior 2 rather than MechWarrior 4. Reminds me a lot of the Morgues map and a couple of the other maps from MechWarrior 2. And that was mainly because at the time, with games, you didn't have the rendering power that you do now, so you couldn't make lots of obstacles unless you were keeping them very close. So if you wanted a big map, you basically had to make it desert or polar tundra. You couldn't make, a giant city map. At the time you'd have to keep it relatively small, say, a couple city blocks worth instead. So this map reminds me a lot of the old MechWarrior 2 maps. It's still a lot of fun. The one complaint I do have is, as Slam said, if you get narked on this map, yeah, there's nowhere to hide. And that means teams, you have absolutely got to be bringing AMS. If you're deciding not to run AMS and not to run ECM, you are letting down your team, because as soon as someone gets narked or someone gets spotted with a UAV, they're going to get rained on. So you've got to play smart on this map. You know, there are trenches that you can pop down into and pop up out of, but you don't have blocking cover like you do on Forest Colony, where you've got trees and hills that you can pop behind. Same thing for Canyon. You know, the trenches on Polar are not as deep as the canyons on Canyon Network. So you've got to, play smarter. You've got to have those support functions like ECM and AMS if you really want to, not have to worry about LRMs on this map. So all of you guys out there that are saying, "Oh, I don't need run AMS because that's a ton and a half that I can use for something else," guess what? Yeah, you might want to be going back and revising that position. You're either going to be running AMS, or you're going to be locked into a few chassis that run ECM, and that's going to be what you're going to do. And that's, being locked into only a few chassis, in my opinion, isn't very fun. You don't get the full range of the game, and after a while it gets kind of boring. So AMS, good go-to. You get, if you're running a group of 6, you get 4 or 5 guys running it. You basically shut down any LRM boat or any multiple LRM boats that are trying to, ruin your day. So it's worthwhile.
I agree with that. Totally.
So, especially in the way the game is played right now, if you go into the solo queue, LRMs are the name of the game right now. It's sad to say, but they are.
Make it right.
People take them because they, can do high amounts of damage very quickly with little, effort on their end.
At least they're better than streaks.
If you're low tier, yeah, expect LRM rain. It's gonna happen. If you're upper tiers, tier 1, tier 2, you don't have to worry about it as much, but there are still a lot of people that bring it, and especially if you have a weekend challenge that is confident on that's basically relies on DPS. If you've got a DPS challenge, expect LRMs across the board, because people want to get things done, and they want to get it done quickly, and LRMs allow them to do so. So
yep,
bringing that AMS, it's not just helping you, it's helping your team. So you get everyone on your team running AMS, you've basically rendered mechs on your opposing team almost completely ineffective. They can't really do anything else, because most of the time they have shucked out all of their secondary weaponry in order to carry more ammo or bigger LRM racks. So that stalker that is running 4, 5 LRM 15s, guess what? He probably only has like 2, 3 small lasers, so you can really ruin his day.
But ruining someone's day is the whole point of the game. Jeez, to your crown.
Yeah. So bring your AMS, boys and girls. Bring your AMS.
Yes, very important, especially on the newer map. Again, there's a lot of open area.
Yeah.
So let's wrap up this podcast, because we've already hit our hour-ish mark. With taking a quick look back on 2015, and let's just list one of the best and worst moments of 2015 for yourself personally. I'll start off. I'd say probably the worst moment was when they tried to launch that PTS with all the quirks for the requirking again, and didn't tell anyone that, hey, this is an overtime thing, and not what's going to be released in the next patch. Yeah, that was a pretty big oversight. Especially with certain mechs getting 1,000% increases in torso twist.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Overall, though, I think the best thing about MWO in 2014, or 2015, sorry, Jesus Christ, I'm going way back in time. Best thing about MWO in 2015 is that by the end of the year, I think balance between clan and intersphere is some of the best the game has seen, and the best any mech warrior game has seen.
All right, Sam, what do you think? What was your best and worst for MWO this year, or this past year?
I would say, I liked the general. I liked the balance pass. I think went a long way to achieving the balance. Like he said, I think it's better. I think the going to Steam was actually a very good idea. I actually think the Steam launch went off very, very well as they could possibly have hoped. Better than they could have expected, I think. And
Better than many of us expected.
Exactly.
Thank God.
And actually, I got friends now who play mainstream games that go, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that game. I've always wanted to try it," and I'm hoping that a few of them pick it up because I recommend it. Because people complain about this, but it's pay to win, or that, but it's other games I'm talking about here, but it's pay to win, like or that, but it's the balance isn't there, or this, but just a variety of things, and I say, this doesn't have that problem. We don't have that problem here. It isn't pay to win. They make their money on early access more than anything else. Premium time helps, but does it set you up to beat your opponent? Absolutely not. Do you get an advantage? Is it grindy? Yes, a little bit. Is it grindy like World of Tanks or World of Warplanes or World of Warships? Hell no, it is not. It's 3 times the gang that Tanks is. So
And no premium ammo that will kill you almost instantly.
So it's easily, and World of Tanks is the most successful MMO out there right now. So honestly, I think this thing will have nowhere to go but up. As far as as the new subscribers get in and they bring friends, and I think that's going to help a lot.
Okay. Well, for me, the worst thing for this year was basically CW over the summer. Community warfare over the summer basically got left behind. PGI kind of was ignoring it. They had put it out there and pretty much forgot about it, and it lasted from late spring through the summer into pretty much halfway through the fall, and it just sucked. People did not, most people were not enjoying community warfare anymore, and I'm fully putting that on PGI. They weren't paying attention anymore, whether that was because they were concentrating on other things or they weren't managing resources correctly. Who knows? But it really brought down morale for the community, especially on a function of the game that we'd been waiting for quite a while. To see it in the state that it was and basically being discarded and ignored really hurt.
Yeah, I think they're on the right track.
Yeah, PGI's coming back. They've kind of admitted mea culpa. We made a couple errors here and there. We're gonna be trying to iron them out. We've got phase 3. We've got a better plan of what we want to do now. So that's encouraging. But best thing for MWO for 2015 came towards the end of the year, and that was our unseen starting to show up. We had Marauder, Warhammer, Rifleman, Archer, all being showcased with these individual packs. PGI and in part with HBS basically, gave the finger to Harmony Gold and said, you know what, we're no longer going to be held hostage by you and your frivolous little patent trolling and copyright trolling. We're going to do what we want to do, and these mechs are endemic to our to the franchise. We want them in our game. We have a vision of what we want to do. We're taking these mechs. We're aesthetically designing them to be what we want, and to hell with you. And I give a great amount of applause for PGI for having the stones to step up and do that. It's something that every BattleTech fan, every Mech Warrior fan has been waiting for a very, very long time. And seeing the Warhammer stomping across now, on our electronic battlefields, it's just wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. The Marauder, was great, but the Warhammer really is one of the iconic mechs for Mech Warrior. And the fact that we're also going to be getting the Rifleman next month and the Archer after that, it's great to see them, willing to take the risks there and, push the envelope for content. So I'm hoping they're going to keep up, the gambling and, well, not even gamble, because I think they've measured out, the risks and gains, and they realize, the risks aren't as great as once believed. So, good on PGI for that. Way to breathe life back into the community and, make us very excited once again for this game.
You sound like an old man reminiscing about college life.
Hey, I grew up in the '80s, and I was introduced. The pride of my BattleTech collection is a second edition of the tabletop game with that Warhammer on the front. The little cardboard stand-ups. It's something I grew up with and I loved. And the fact that I couldn't have my Marauder or my Warhammer in any of the Mech Warrior games at all, because Harmony Gold basically said, no, we own the rights to this and you can't use it unless you pay us all this extra money, and yada yada yada. It just really, really hurt at times that we would see these. We knew these mechs existed. We heard tales of them, and they were just part of the core for BattleTech, for Mech Warrior, both in the tabletop and in the novels, and you just couldn't do anything with them because of these little trolling pieces of scum.
If it makes you feel any better, Harmony Gold is all the senior directors of Harmony Gold are in serious trouble in Italy right now. They're wanted in Italy.
Yeah, they're under indictment. So it just tickles the cockles of my heart when I read that, and I'm waiting for that, for them to have their day in court and get reamed. But I'm glad to see these mechs coming home and showcasing in Mech Warrior Online. It's a long time coming. They are iconic. It's for good or ill. I'm glad to see them.
I think it's funny that you mentioned the second edition, because that's exactly what got me into Mech Warrior.
Same here. I still have my second edition box.
Mine has since gone missing, unfortunately.
Yep. You guys are all old men.
Shut up. You're just jealous.
I think maybe it's just you.
I'm just jealous that you get to experience the 80s.
You're just jealous
For
that
sure.
we've been drinking for far longer than you have.
I've probably been drinking longer than he's been alive.
Probably.
So overall, 2015, what's our take? Good year for MWO? Bad year?
Absolutely.
I would say 2015, to wrap everything all up, 2015 was the best year for Mech Warrior Online, especially when you consider the lackluster year that 2014 was, of pretty much absolutely nothing getting done.
Yeah. The 2014, the saving grace was the early release of Community Warfare. That really kind of saved PGI's bacon.
I think. Go ahead.
If it was a gamble to launch Community Warfare before the end of the year, because we had been told time and time again that it was coming, and to finally see it there was very exciting. And it was probably released way earlier than it actually should have been. From looking in hindsight, PGI probably should have held off so they could deal with a lot of the detail work on it, cross all the T's, dot all the I's, a lot of that. But it really engendered a lot of goodwill from the community by doing that. It basically completely differentiated them from IGP in the minds of the community. It was, yes, IGP was holding everything back. They were the bad company. They were the bad partner. Shame on them. Good on you, PGI. That, really, I think, helped save 2014 and the community the community expectations of what this game would be, and that PGI was the developer to do it. So 2015, a lot of it's been PGI, I think, finding its feet and getting ready to take the game where they want to take it. And it's not been the easiest road for them, but they at least are making a conscious effort, to keep the game going and to always be improving on it. Whether they succeed every time, that's a very debatable point, but they're showing at least commitment for it.
Yep.
Well, I think this is a good place to end for the first episode of 2016. So I want to thank you guys for coming out and showing up and hanging out for an hour-ish. And of course, thank you to all our listeners. I'll try to get this up as soon as possible. So it'll probably be going up on the 22nd or so. Well, if you're listening, of course, it's already up. But congratulations. And so here's to a good 2016 of MechWarrior and BattleTech related stuff. And of course, thank you everybody for